Teammates, back again, man. I appreciate you. We are officially in full swing of things in season 2. If this is your first time listening in, buckle up. If you've been back, get ready because we have yet again another fantastic guest that I met, and you guessed it, Clubhouse. If you haven't got on, make sure you get on Clubhouse, please. You're missing out. That being said, man, I heard him speak. And he was just talking my language, absolutely talking my language, saying some things that really pulled on my heartstrings. It's Mr. Edward Lee, author of multiple books, but one of the main ones that really struck me was Angrily Ever After. Angrily Ever After. What's up, Edward Lee? How you doing, man?
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to have you on because there's not many men who have the guts and the courage to speak about marriage, much less put out books about it and have that kind of be the way you lead in and the way you present yourself to people. So, man, I'm proud. I'm just gonna get that out the way now. I'm proud of you, man. I'm happy that you're doing this kind of work.
I'm humbled, man. I'm excited to be here as well. Looking forward to spending some time with you today and seeing where the Lord leads us.
Absolutely. So talk to us about the beginning of your journey. What made you the guy? So just to put the website out there, guys, the name of his website is elevateyourmarriage.com. Elevateyourmarriage.com. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. But just curious, man, what made you the guy to speak on this subject?
Well, it's funny. I went to college to get a finance degree. Years later, I was in ministry. I was working on my master's, and the church that I was serving at asked, they told me, really, they told me, they said, you're in seminary, you work on staff, we need you to counsel a couple. This was 2 weeks after my third wedding anniversary, which means that I knew everything about marriage.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure. I had it all figured out.
Right.
And the first couple that I was asked to counsel, they got married the year that I would have been in 6th grade. Okay.
Oh my
goodness. So their kids were older than me. I thought it was like one of these practical joke type things. They're laying some heavy stuff on me, and my eyes are kind of swimming around in my head, like I don't know what to say. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I started throwing out scripture, love is patient, love is kind. And they would look at me, they'd look at each other, and look back at me, and it just wasn't working, right? I was just trying to just throw out scripture to just as a lifeline, but it wasn't really connecting with where they were. And so I started to listen, and in listening to them, it's 2006. The economy was bad. They had lost everything, just like so many couples did. And so I started sharing with them the marriage of Job and his wife, and they connected with it. It was like giving them a friend that they never had met before and could really speak to their situation. And from there, I started studying the rest of the marriage narratives, marriage interactions, stories in the Bible. There's 60 of them. And what I find is that they deal with everything we deal with today: trust, intimacy, finances, anything you can think of today. It's been happening since the beginning of time. And so I now, for the last 15, 16 years, I've helped couples to understand that your marriage story is in the Bible. And it's just been a blessing from there. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for sharing that. But before we go on, can you, I know it's probably going to be tough for you to do this briefly, but can you, as briefly as possible, explain the story of Job for anyone who's not listening? Because I'm sure what you said, there's going to be people that want to go and find it and see if they can help them out in their situations.
Absolutely. So the most succinct way to say it is that Job was the richest, wisest man of the East. And in the span of an afternoon, he lost it all. And many couples today can relate to that. We know what financial stress, strain, ruin is. But I asked the book is called Job, so we forget that he was married. And in the 2nd chapter, his wife said, "Hey man, stop acting so holy. Just curse God and die. Stop acting like you got it all together, Job. You've obviously done something wrong here because we're in this financial ruin." They even lost their 10 children in addition to all of their financial losses. And so he then, the story is that he holds on to his faith and his wife is unable to. And the question that I ask couples is, what if Job's wife, right? What if his trust was more in her in that moment? She's very real, and life is like this sometimes. I can't take it anymore. This is too much for me to handle. And he keeps his faith in the Lord. She is not able to walk any further in this. Long story short, when God restores Job, he restores his wife as well.
Okay, now are you recording from somewhere because you're kind of breaking up there?
No, I think my audio might have switched over to another system, but let me get that back here. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine. It's just I think something kind of switched up. Just wanted to make sure you knew.
Yep, got it. All right, there we go. So were you able to hear the end of that then? That Job...
Yeah, I was able to hear it. If you want to just, if you want to repeat a little bit of that, because I was able to hear it, but you never know, people might be listening and they want to hear it again. Because it was good. I'll preface it by saying that. Brothers are listening in now, like, okay, these two dudes got my attention.
Well, long story short, he kept his eyes on the Lord. His wife was unable to. Yes. And when God restored him at the end of the chapter, he restored his wife as well. They were given 10 more children and double all that they lost. I can't make a promise for marriages today that if you've lost some things, it'll be doubled. That's not the promise here. But the promise is that if we keep our eyes on the Lord, when he restores one, if one of us can keep our faith, then he's able to restore. And when he does, he restores his wife as well. And again, my question is, what if his trust was in his wife? And that's how I use that, because there are things in marriage that come in that challenge our trust. And sometimes we put our trust more in our spouse than we do in the Lord. And I think that's what we learned from Job.
But you realize that ultimately that creates such a dilemma when it comes to the way we've been taught, right? We've been taught to go after and be the man and have faith in another person. We are not taught to have faith in somebody else that we can't really touch and see. So can you kind of just speak on that transition? I've often heard, and I've said this on the show many times, that life starts when school ends, and the reason I believe in that is because in school, we're kind of channeled into this way where we got to depend on another person. But when we're in the real world and we don't have that access to people, now it's like, wow, where do we go? We're lost.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying in your question is really the answer. Yes. We have been trained to go after what I call Hollywood marriages, or the media perspective, the worldly perspective of marriage and relationships. And I think these 60 marriages, the narratives of the Bible, they teach us God's way, right? And so everything in our culture says, if trust has been broken, if you're angry, deal with it this way, deal with it in your own strength. And I think we find that leaves us tired, it leaves us empty, and it leaves us with at least fractured hope, if any hope at all. But Job becomes this model. I found that with the first couple, and here 16 years later, it's still the story that these marriages really do give us principles that'll help us to see how to handle what we're facing. Because God's been leading couples in and out of challenges since the beginning of time. And we forget that.
Right. So what are some of the principles?
Well, there's one right there with trust. We see with Adam and Eve, I would say the most significant verse in scripture regarding marriage, when I see couples that are, their relationship is strained or at the point of divorce, it comes from Genesis 2:24. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined. You won't believe this. I met a man.
And be joined. I know this one. Yeah, I know. And be joined.
But like here's the thing.
The one with the ribs. Help me,
I met a guy years ago at a book signing. He'd been married for 51 years. And I jokingly said, hey, you should be sitting here signing books and I should be over there listening to you. And he says, nah, brother, listen, these have been the worst 51 years of my life. Right.
And my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking, okay,
oh my goodness,
there's been some infidelity. They got financial problems, something big. Can I tell you what he started telling me? He started talking about literally peas and carrots. And I'm like, what? And I didn't get to talk to his wife, so I didn't hear her side of the story. But he
Yeah.
literally was saying his wife would go to the grocery store and not leave room for him in the freezer. That's what he was upset about. And that was
Oh
his
my gosh.
story. And what the word tells us, for this reason, a man must leave his father and mother and be joined. And Christ then says, he quotes that in Matthew 19:5 when he's asked about divorce, and then adds on to it, what God joins together can't be separated. And the problem with marriages today, relationships today, that are facing severe strain, separation, considering divorce, is that something hasn't been left, right?
Yes.
Whether it's our
Yes.
ambitions, our emotions, our perspectives, whatever it is, something hasn't been left. And it's an ongoing battle. We have to continue. Every time I get to a place with my wife and we're going through severe challenges, I've got to look at what I haven't left. I expected it to be this way, but this is the reality of what I'm dealing with. And so I've got to leave that so we can be joined.
Absolutely, man. I had a similar situation. I was at a bar one time and I just kind of, sparked up a conversation with this guy, and he was talking about, he's been married 3 or 4 times. And he tells me, one time he was at one of the weddings and he went over to the best man during the wedding. He just looked at him. He's like, what the hell am I doing? He said that while he was getting married. And you bring up such a powerful point, because this is like one of my favorite verses as well. Is, there's many great, like, the downfall of a man is a woman. There's many great men whose downfall is a woman. And because we're 2 African American men speaking on this subject, I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about where our specific problems are. I as a person, I've been on the record where I'm attracted to women who aren't just Black. And that's kind of got me into some hot water. I'm attracted to women of all races and things like that. So if you can kind of speak on what our issue is, like why we see so many problems, so many divorces, and so many of us that are failing in that department, I would think of myself and a lot of listeners would be very, very appreciative of it.
Yeah, sure. Let me first say that what I write
Mm-hmm.
is for all cultures. When I released my first book in 2010, Husband, Wives,
Mm-hmm.
God, I didn't even think about it. I didn't pay attention to it. The couple that I used, the image that I used for my first book cover was a non-African American couple. It was a white couple, and
Yes.
I got all kind of criticism for that. I'm
Uh-oh.
trying to do this, I'm trying to do
I'm
that.
telling you.
You're a sellout, all this stuff, right? But the material,
Yes.
the work, the content worked well. And I found that the people that argued the most about that also bought the most books. So the content is for everyone.
Yes.
But there is a specific, because I am a Black guy, I'm an African American guy. I write about my grandparents, and how they had to raise 2 kids, get them from Philadelphia to Florida in the 40s and 50s and not be able to go into a hotel. I talk about that. I use references from the Commodores because that's my background. That's my, so I speak from, I write from, I coach from my, my personal experiences, my things that I've been through. But again, they are principles that meet to all races, all folks from all different backgrounds. Specifically, to African Americans, we have, and I just been mentioning my grandparents and their story, some of that's just coming up. We have some historical, long-term, long-lasting challenges. And I believe that our faith perspective, when applied correctly, because we've been in church for many years, but we not always have been in right relationship with the Lord. But as we get our eyes off of our spouse and onto the Lord, I think that's where we find our strength. And so we've got to, we do have some cultural, traditional backgrounds, understandings, challenges, and they are many and they are real. I live in the Baltimore area. I do share with a lot of couples that have challenging backgrounds. But it's the word. It's the word of God that levels out the playing field, whatever the background is, and gives us some strength to change our view and then see our marriage relationship strengthened as a result of it.
Absolutely. And men, to the men listening specifically, I love his point about understanding that it is all about the word. It is not just about, oh man, she fine, or oh man, this one's willing to be with me. It's not about just being with someone who's willing to be with you. You have got to ask yourself, has God sent me this woman? And am I personally doing the work that I feel like I'm called to do? Because in many marriages, in many situations, the man doesn't feel like I've seen so many, and as a former football player, I've seen so many men use women until they get to a place in life, and then all of a sudden they don't want them anymore. Like I've seen the shacking up situations. I think I went to two different colleges, and I've actually no, I went to three different colleges, and the shacking up, that, oh, I'm just going to be with this one because that person's available. Those are the kinds of things where 51 years later, just like Edward was saying, you're going to say, man, 51 years have been the worst years of my life, all because you made a decision that was going to make you comfortable in that moment. And you didn't care about what lives you ruined in the process. So really give yourself that perspective so you understand, look, this is a bigger deal than I initially considered it was.
And I to your point, I often will meet with men
Mm-hmm.
specifically, because what the marriages of the Bible give us is a model. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes guys will come to me and say, how can I do what I've never seen modeled in front of me? How can I be a good husband if
Yes.
my relationship with my father was strained? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cautious of that because I don't want us to say that as if that's reserved only for a certain culture or only for all cultures have challenges and father relationships and parenting relationships. That's no one owns that, right? So I don't say that
Right.
as if that's owned to the African American culture. But when I do get guys who say to me, I have this specific situation, I had no model, I had a good model, I had a bad model.
Mm-hmm.
I spend time with husbands to be specifically, we'll spend like 6 months together, just going through different men, different husbands in the Bible and how they handled certain things. And it gives a framework so that if we don't have a good model that we can have in front of us, you don't have to take the model from the media. You don't have to take the
Yes.
model from some other place. There's a model right in scripture that shows us how to be good husbands, to our wives.
Right. So, all right, what are some examples about, because when I've done this and I've went to a church and I've been through it. I've been through it because the church that I was going to, I was being judged and I had to stop going and things like that. And I'm sure that happens in a lot of different churches. How do you get people focused on the word when it comes to maybe comparing a story to what a person's doing? So if you're reading through Adam and Eve, or you're reading through one of the 60 stories in the Bible, and then someone says, look, I just got a new job and me and my wife are having conflicts about work and things like that. What are some examples in which what would you kind of tell a couple? Let's pretend someone's going through it now. What would you tell a couple that is work is getting in the way and they're thinking about ending their marriage because of work?
Yeah. So again, there's sometimes where there's stories, and there's sometimes where there's just like a biblical principle. It may not be a specific
Mm-hmm.
story that you can say that this is like a twin, to what
Yeah.
I'm going through. But there are parallels that we
Yes.
can draw from, and then ultimately there's an example of Christ as our model in First Peter, and it gives
Mm-hmm.
very specific instruction how a wife is to kind of model herself, pattern herself based on her relationship with Christ, and then it gives very specific instruction for the husband as well. So that would be a good one to kind of use to set the
Mm-hmm.
framework. And that's how I typically do it. Of this
Yes.
is this is the model, this is the strength that we have. Then we have passages like in Romans 12 that tells us about how to treat people when we're dealing with anger, right? So that wouldn't be a
Mm-hmm.
specific marriage, but it gives us a blueprint to how to treat people who aren't treating us well. So I
Yeah.
just find that the
Yeah.
Bible is just full of this instruction for how to live and how to treat people. Ultimately, we've got to give an account for our own lives at the end of the day. And so I hear sometimes people have reasons they deem to be valid as to why they do whatever they do. And I say this, I don't say this flippantly, but by God's grace, I don't cheat on my wife because I don't cheat on my wife. It has nothing to do, I hope this isn't taken out of context, it has nothing to do with her, right? I hear excuses, right. I hear reasons given, well, I'm this way because of her or him. We have to give an account for our own lives to the Lord. And so when we make that covenant, that's who we make it to first.
Yeah.
Right? We make it to the Lord first, and then our husband and wife is just they're involved in it as well. But that's the first focus of the covenant. And so it really comes down to our development of our own spiritual relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, man, and I could have used you in high school, man, because I was with, I was with my high school girlfriend for 4 years, and I definitely cheated, and that was the reason I gave. I like right before I cheated, in my mind, I said, "Oh, well, she cheated on me first, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it," and I justified it. And I'm glad you said that, because in my adult years, I've learned that's no reason. No, then I should have had the guts to just leave her. And I think a lot of us justify the things we do because we don't see it as that big of a deal. I've had a friend to tell me, I don't think oral sex is cheating. I don't consider oral sex cheating. And we as men, we talk and we do those things, but at some point somebody got to step up and hold us accountable, because it's like this one book I read by Hill Harper. He titled the book The Conversation, and we're seeing. Have you read it?
Yes, years ago. Yeah,
the conversation. We're seeing the extinction of our people, particularly Black men, because we're not stepping up and being fathers, being great husbands, being people that are going to grow. We're just sitting back and expecting things to change when we're not changing in ourselves, and we're always using that as an excuse. So, man, again, could have used you in high school, and I think a lot of young high school kids could use you now, especially being in that area. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, so I know that that Baltimore area will definitely use you, can definitely use you, doing some great work.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's and I think what you mentioned as far as Hill Harper is so important, that we've got to realize that our behavior does have an impact. Our marriages, that's a question I often ask to engage couples. What kind of legacy we develop, like Christ-centered? Every couple, I spend 6 months with a couple before they get married. And so I do, Christ-centered goals, which are different than my goals. They're Christ-centered goals. A Christ-centered mission statement and a Christ-centered vision statement. And along the way of developing those for a couple, one of the questions that we ask is, what legacy, if you can fast forward to the end of your relationship, what legacy do you want to leave? If you allow me, can I share a story? It'll take me about 30 seconds. Can I share a story with you?
No, listen, this is unlimited time on Move Swiftly, man. Please, just tell it, man. Your mic is yours.
I had years ago, I was an assistant pastor at a church, and it was the most unusual day. And when you get a day like this, you have to know that this is the Lord. This isn't an accident. I got a call, I'd say around noontime. Go visit this man, this family. The husband is dying of cancer. He's got a couple of weeks to live. I go in, and can I tell you, the man was crying. His brother was crying. And I actually knew him. He was crying. And after I kind of got him consoled and got him, his brother was sobbing, and tried to get, obviously he understands that his time is short. So I get that that's part of it. But there was something in his tears that was a whole story that you could see in it. So I finally got to that point of asking him, talking about it. And his concern was he understood what he was leaving his family. He understood his son was not equipped, that when his son was in his early 20s, he understood that his son was going to get his car and he was going to mess it up and he was going to get himself into trouble. He's I mean, just imagine that you're at a point where you can't do anything else physically, but you realize that you've spent your years in a way that now that you're leaving the scene, he sees the detriment. He understood the
Yeah.
financial mess that he's leaving his wife,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I spent some time with him. About 2 hours later, I get a call to visit another man, similar situation. I hadn't really met this man, but maybe a time or two before. But he short time with he also had cancer. And I go in his house. He and his wife are singing songs. She's got some food cooking on the stove. They're flipping through photo albums. Completely different scene. Same afternoon. And he he talked about the memories they had. He left her. He was leaving his wife with all of his stuff in order, nothing to worry about. His kids had graduated college. And so
Hmm.
he's like, I've done all I can do. And both these
Hmm.
men were, I'd say, in their mid 50s. So this wasn't, these weren't like 80 or 90-year-old men. These are men who were still in what
Still
we would
young. Yeah.
expect
Still
to,
young. Right.
right? Sure, sure. And I always think about that when I'm coaching couples, that we want to start with the end in mind. So if
Oh
you could
man.
fast
Man.
forward to the
Absolutely.
end of your marriage, before
Hmm.
you stand at the altar, what kind of legacy do you want to leave, right?
Hmm.
And I share those two stories because those are kind of the options, right? Do we
Yeah.
want to spend
Yeah.
our years arguing and kind of spinning our wheels and in regret, or do we want to live and have memories and photos and stories to tell because of how we lived? And so I try to help couples start with
Yeah.
the end in mind. What kind of legacy do you want to
Absolutely.
leave at the end of your marriage?
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me into the next thing I want to talk to you about next, which is it's such an inevitable subject when you're talking about this. It's sex.
Hmm?
Sex is one of those things, in my opinion, that I've seen it tear people down more than it's lifted people up. I'm 32 now, Edward, and I have yet to attend a wedding. And well, the two weddings I did attend when I was younger, the couples are no longer together. It was my uncles, and I've yet to attend a wedding of a friend, and this, that, third. I think that sex has been the detriment in a lot of situations, myself included. I'm not saying I'm not myself. I'm been a victim of it as well. Think about this, and to my listeners, and you can kind of chime in a little bit, because at this point I've been celibate now for over 10 years. And think about this, to my listeners. You go into the car, and I use this example all the time. You go buy a car, you need a new car or whatever, and you go to the car shop, and you have the option of getting a brand new, fresh off the lot, 0 miles on it. You have that option. Or you get a car that's used, run down, has a ton of miles on it. You got to finance this, you got to do all this options. Which option would you take? You would take the one with brand new wheels. And I did not recognize this until I, like I was telling you about a few weeks ago, when I got onto Devon Franklin's work. I didn't really realize the power of being celibate, the
Mm.
strength it gives you when it comes to, I don't have to, like, a woman can't entice me because of the sex. They can, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be attracted to you all day, but in the back of my mind, I realize I want to be that car that is 0 miles on it. Can you speak on that? Because I get a lot of, like, this is when a lot of men tune me out. They turn off the show and things like that. So can you kind of speak on that a little bit, just so people know that I'm not alone, or that you can kind of confirm everything?
Yeah, when I first started in 2006 area, 2007, 2008, I used to have couples. I used to tell them to abstain during
Mm-hmm.
the counseling, the 6 months of counseling.
Yes.
And it's funny, back then I got very little pushback. They would say, okay, because
Hmm.
I would say, we need to set a good foundation for your marriage relationship. I know, maybe up to this point, you've been having sex, but I would ask them to abstain. And then I started noticing about 2010 or somewhere in there that
Mm-hmm.
the resistance started rising, and I had fewer couples that would come for counseling. And so I've relaxed that as a requirement. I still underscore it,
Mm-hmm.
and I still make the call, make that request. But I do still counsel couples where I used to not counsel if they were still being intimate, while they were engaged leading up to
Wow.
the marriage. I do still counsel them because I feel the benefit of the counsel is stronger than none at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't encourage it, and I liken it to when my son was born. Um, he would want to get off the bed and run across the room, right? But his
Mm-hmm.
legs weren't strong enough. And what happens when a
Wow.
couple is entering sex into their relationship before marriage? They're taking on marriage issues, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not yet equipped for it. Paul says marriage is a mystery. I've done over 100
Mm-hmm.
weddings, about 120 something weddings. I can't tell you what it is in the marriage ceremony, if you will, but
Mm-hmm.
something in that is a strength that turns couples. There's a strength that the Lord gives to a married couple that is different than an engaged, a courting, a living together couple. I can't explain
Yeah.
it. I can't tell you what it
Yeah.
is. I can just tell you that the Bible calls it a mystery, and something
Mm-hmm.
in there. Years ago, we hear a lot about 666 and it's sign of the beast and devil.
Mm-hmm.
777, July 7th of 2007. I got, like I said, I do six months counseling with couples. I got, my phone was ringing off the hook. July 7th of 2007 was a Saturday. Couples were calling. They say, I want to get married.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 7th. And they saw kind of if 666 is bad, then 777 is good, right? And so I had all these couples. I did 9 weddings in one day. It was like a drive-through, doing one after the other.
Yeah.
And I had I had one couple. I said, you want to get married? It's Wednesday. I'll marry you on Saturday because you've been living together for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I obviously can't do 6 months of counseling in 3 days. So come back after you get married. They said, listen, we don't need that. We've been together for 10 years. We've already
Yeah.
been through all that. We don't need any counseling. I
Right.
said, okay, fine. If you want to get out of what you're in, they were living together. They wanted to get married. I married them
Yeah.
that Saturday. They called me back 2 weeks later and they said, you're right. It's altogether different. Being married
Mm-hmm.
is not like living together. Something has happened. Something has changed. And we did 6 months of counseling from that point forward. Right. So
Wow.
to your point, there is a
Mm-hmm.
significant difference between dating, living together, and being married. And when we enter sex into it too early, it
Mm-hmm.
does indeed challenge the relationship. We start taking on married problems
Mm-hmm.
before God has joined us together in marriage, and it makes a difference.
And it's that comfort zone. It leads to a level of comfort that is dangerous, even in business. You and I both know this. If we, as both of us have books out, if we ever got comfortable, the books are not going to sell. If we stop grinding, if we stop putting in the work, if we stop going on Clubhouse, books aren't going to sell and connections aren't going to be made. It's the same way that you should apply to your relationships and apply to your personal lives. If you get comfortable with a person, guess what? Eventually you are not going to grow. And it's like a domino effect, just like you were saying, it affects everyone around you. And all these years of comfort. And I don't know, that story you just told about the 51-year-old man, that has me, man, it it has me thinking,
Scares
but
you a
it's
little
like, it's scaring me because I'm thinking 51 years of
bit.
just staying in that comfort zone and knowing that could have been me if I would have stayed with my high school girlfriend, if I would have just stayed with someone I met at college or whatever. That could have easily been Oswan or easily been anyone listening if you don't really take in the lessons that we were sharing with you today. Understand that how important that is, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Man, I know we could probably talk for hours, man, but I know you're busy, so I'm gonna let you get out of here soon. Before we go, though, can you just tell everyone what's next for you, how they can get in touch with you, and I know you're doing some things, so the mic is yours.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for this time again.
Mm-hmm.
I just have so enjoyed this conversation. So I am right now sharing with churches and groups the story of Angrily Ever After. We have a little bit of fairy tale dust, whether we know it or not, as we're going into our marriage. And if
Mm-hmm.
if someone's been married for any point of time, they realize that things aren't what they expected. And so we want to break out of the fairy tale. So the book is called Angrily Ever After: When the Fairy Tale Ends and Marriage Gets Real. And I started just last 2 weeks, I've started working on my next book, a fifth book. I hope it'll be out in the fall. Right now it's called What Cancer Can't Stop. when in sickness and in health really hits your marriage. So I'm trying to help couples that are going through difficult diagnoses on how to overcome that, how to walk through that together. So that's what I'm working on for the future. I got my right now and I got the future. The website is elevateyourmarriage.com, where all the books are available. I thank you for the opportunity, and I hope this was help and encouragement to those that are listening as well.
Absolutely. It certainly helped me in the 30 minutes that we've been on. So I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people do some, just make that change. Just make that change, that shift in mindset in your life, man. It can lead to something truly, truly great, man. And with that, is there any last words that you want to leave everyone with before I officially close?
Just to stay in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
If find good Christ-centered resources and good for strengthening your relationship. You used the word keep grinding earlier. I've met couples that have been together for 30 years and are still reading and studying. And so we can't rest. Let's not plateau. Let's keep our eyes on Christ and allow him to be the strength of our marriage, not just of us individually, but of our marriage as well. And so I believe couples with that, anything I can do to serve, you can go to my website, we can set up some time to talk. I'd be happy to help your marriage get to a stronger relationship with the Lord as well. So thank you again for the time.
My pleasure. All right, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.